A very special podcast talking about Epsom Derby.
Yeah,
Always one of
looking
those
forward to
red
it.
letter days in the racing calendar is the Derby.
Let's get into Friday then. So we've got the Coronation Cup 240. Yokes, last one, 3-year-old fillies. A big one on Saturday, 3:30, the Betfred Derby.
There's only been one winner out of stall 19, with
Interesting.
I think it's stall 10, having had 11
Cash
winners.
out,
So it
cash
seems to
out.
be
Position. Annie Power at the last race down. Annie Power has gone but in front of the last left. Melanie Lloyd.
Try the first time. They're running up towards the finish, and he's mistaken the winning post. He's mistaken the winning post completely, Roger Loughlin, and Hoyt's now here.
For Archibald, Hardy is defends his title, but Archibald is flattened out in second. Then he's right is beginning to power. He's drifting off a true line. He's flying, and this was coming home. Swings the gun to win his fourth Betfair chase, and Cordo Star is still the king. Cordo Star wins.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tailed Off. This is a no holds barred podcast that dives headfirst into the wonderfully weird world of horse racing. And today we've got a very special podcast talking about Epsom Derby this weekend. How are you feeling about it, boys?
Looking forward to
forward
it.
to it.
Always one of
Looking
those
forward
red
to
letter days in the racing calendar is the Derby.
It's the
The
Derby.
Derby, we spoke about that.
The Derby, unlike the one I spoke about last time, a Derby. So the Derby. All right, so we've got a few races to preview.
Well, the big race is on Saturday, which is obviously the Derby, the actual Derby itself. But there's a couple
Yeah,
of races that have been
Epsom's
picked
on for
out for the
2 days,
Friday.
so we just
Yeah,
pulled out the three Group 1 races.
it is not the biggest race of the weekend.
No,
There is a
no.
bigger race going on at Lingfield on Saturday night.
The
Well,
midnight race.
yes.
Midnight
Yeah, the
If
train
you want
midnight
to
race.
know a little bit more about the cheeky one on Saturday, then tune into our other podcast, which we've got a special guest from Jack Morland, trainer of Call Out. Shout out to Jack. All right, let's get into Friday then. So we've got the Coronation Cup 240. Duncan, should we start with you? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so there's, Calandigan's at top of the market, which is a French raider that's coming over. I can see the appeal, and I completely understand why the horse is favourite for the race. But the odds of the horse, I don't agree with. I think it's currently 4-6 in the market, which for me is just way too short. If you gave me 20
Very
quid
short.
and said this is your last 20 quid, put it on this 4-6 shot, I wouldn't have it. The horse is rated, I think it's 125, so extremely high rating for flat horses. But I'd rather I've come down on Giavolotto, for Marco Botti, and the ride with Osin Murphy. It's currently 9-1. The only slight nag about that is it's only two places. There's only seven runners in the race. But if you can shop around, I did have a quick look at Bet365 just to see what the three places price is. It's currently 7-2, but they were 6-1, two places. So if you
Where are
can
you
try and
seeing
find
9
three
to 1?
places again,
Where are you seeing 9-1?
Brooks looked earlier,
Oh, okay, fair enough.
but I can't seem to find they're not showing at the moment the option of additional places. But if you can find, if it does drift maybe on 365 or something like that, see if you can try and get a 9-2 or something bigger potentially, and then I'd flag it as an each way at three places. But I still think at 9-1, the horse is definitely worth a go. It's one over the 1 mile 4, which is what the distance for this race is, which is the Coronation Cup. It came fifth behind Calandigan last time out of Maidan, which was in the Shima Cup. Shima Classic. So yeah, I think his last main win that the horse had was in the Hong Kong Vase, which was the last start of December in 2024. So yeah, I just think at the prices, I'd rather have a bigger price than try and take an odds on and sweat me testes or cherries off for a mile and 4.
You'd have to put a lot
So
of cherries down for that.
there'd be a lot of cherries that would have to go on that, and it's a no for me for the favourite. Could hack up, fair enough if it does, but my each way would be on Giavolotto.
Oh, thanks, Duncan. What are you thinking, Elliot? Agree?
Yeah, similar vibes in terms
Yeah.
of. I agree with Duncan in terms of the price of Clandigan looks too short for me. He was 8-13 when I was writing this, and he's already drifted out to 4-6, as Duncan said. So maybe people are already agreeing with us before the pod goes out. He was a 3-year-old last season, was very impressive when winning the King Edward Stakes at Royal Ascot last season, and then he was just touched off in a couple of real big Group 1s at the end of the season. So the Juddmonte International Stakes at York, when he got beaten by Seat of Troy, where he kind of came too far from the back, trying to run him down late, and then finally on Champions Day at Ascot at the end of the season, he was beaten by Anne Mart of Shadwell's, who reappeared recently in the Tatsal's Gold Cup in Ireland. I actually backed him. He came there swinging on the bridle, and Jim Crowley still couldn't get him home. That side. So his form is pretty solid, but he, as Duncan said, ran at Meydan earlier in the year and hasn't been seen since. And he was turned over at a short price at 11 to 10. And you're basically it just comes down to price. If it's even money or odds against, you could start to feel a little bit more like that's a fair price. But at 4 to 6, 8 to 13, he's worth taking on because he hasn't been seen since then, and that absence could be a case of he would probably be favourite for a King George, which is in July at Ascot. So this could be like a stepping stone for that race, and you don't want to be taking 4 to 6 for a prep race. So I've gone for a different one against him to Duncan. So I've gone for Jan Bruegel. Aidan O'Brien is just the absolute master of middle distance horses, but also older horses and getting them to keep training and improving from their 3-year-old career to their 4-year-old career. So this is a horse that kind of fits that mould. He was quite lightly raced as a 3-year-old, but improved all the time, and that culminated in a pretty hard fought and gutsy St Ledger victory, which is a Group 1 for 3-year-olds at Doncaster, one of the classics that we spoke about a few weeks ago. And then he beat a horse that day, actually was a stablemate called Illinois, who's won a Group 2 and a Group 3 race since then, so held the form, and he's actually favourite for the Ascot Gold Cup. So even though he's a stablemate, he's still beating a very decent horse. And Aidan, so many of Aidan's need a prep race on their reappearance. The earlier they start seems to be the worse they are, and he ran back in April. So people would probably be thinking, oh, well, he hasn't performed to that same level, so they're ignoring him. But I think he was 4 to 1. I can't see that anymore. He has been clipped to 7 to 2, but I still would be taking that price against the Fav, who hopefully one of us can get turned over on Oaks Day in the Coronation Cup.
Lovely. And in terms of the ground, going good at the moment.
The
So I
saying
don't know if
good,
that affects anything.
as Jack was saying, so Epsom's not far from Lingfield. In our other pod, Jack was saying that there's 8 mil of rain forecast, and Epsom's going to be sort of caught by similar showers. So the problem is
Going soft, maybe.
how much are they going to get? It's definitely not going to be rapidly quick ground, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something to factor in as well. All right, so that's the Coronation Cup. Let's get on to the Oaks, shall we? So Class 1 3-year-old fillies. What we thinking then, El?
Yeah, so this is the female version of the Derby, which is the Oaks. So one of the key classics of the season. It's an interesting race, 9 runners. Desert Flower was obviously the impressive winner of the 1,000 Guineas, which is over a mile, which is the first classic of the season for the fillies. Big step up in trip is the first thing you'd say from a mile to a mile and a half. The second and third, who were both trained by Ollie Sangster, they've both been beaten, quite well beaten, you would say, in the French and Irish equivalent of the 1,000 Guineas. So the form's already taken a bit of a knock there. And I've just been looking at a pedigree, and I just couldn't see much hope for stamina. And again, same thing about price. She's around 11 to 8 at the minute, which is pretty skinny when you've got to take a sort of leap of faith on how strong the form was of the Guineas, and a leap of faith of if she's going to stay. So, and with 9 runners, I'm thinking there's plenty in here to have a look at each way. Aidan O'Brien has then got the next 3 in the market, and he's won. They've all won kind of like pretty well-known, well-regarded trials for the Oaks at Lingfield, York, and at Chester. So it's quite hard to see which is the one of those if you were going to take her on. But the one that really just, and I did back her that day in the York race, the Musidora, is Well. So I think probably the jockey bookings are out actually, and I don't know which one Ryan's on. I'm assuming Ryan's on Mini Hawk because of the price. She's the second favourite.
Checking now for you, mate.
Duncan will hopefully confirm shortly. But I thought Well was
I'll
super
get back to you on that one.
Yeah, impressive when she won the Musidora. That's over 10 furlongs, but she's out of a Galileo mare, so that means on the dam side there's so much stamina in the pedigree, and she just won going away at the line, and I thought there's no problems for me about the trip. And 13 to 2 is a lovely each way price in a 9-runner race. So Well for me in the Oaks, mate.
Lovely. Yeah, jockey's still TBC by the looks of it on that, but I don't know if you
I
found
can't
it.
see it on the app at the moment.
They have been announced, but it's an Aidan O'Brien thing. They don't publish it.
Right, okay.
Unless someone's interviewed him, nobody knows. Which is ridiculous.
Bastard.
Good old prize money for that as well, 325k.
Yeah.
Serious dollar. What are you thinking then, Duncan?
Literally, I think Al's just taking the words out of my mouth as
Exactly
we were
the same.
kind of writing these up. Yeah, no, Well's the one. Exactly what Al said. Desert Flower. I think the step up in trip concerns me with the pedigree of the horse, and there's nothing that screams wanting the big step up in trip. I mean, Charlie Appleby's an incredible trainer. He may well have seen. You will obviously know the horse far better than we ever would. So potentially there's something there. But it's like Al said, based on the pedigree for Whirl and being out of the Dam Sarving Galileo. 1.5 miles, so I don't see it being any issue. And it's a great each way price at sevens and hacked up in the Musadora as well, in the Group 3 Musadora by over 5 lengths. And that was over 1 mile too. So you think that the step up to 1.4 should be pretty okay. So yeah, that would be the play on Whirl.
All right, both going for well. Lovely. So that's Friday then. Shall we talk about the big one on Saturday, 3:30, the Betfred Derby? 900k winnings for that race. Pretty good, don't it? Is that
All
one of
pennies.
is that one of the highest of the year, or of
Yeah,
interest?
it's up there definitely.
In the UK?
it'll be up
Especially
there.
the
I mean,
UK.
the Derby is supposed to be one of the biggest races of the season, so
Yeah,
it deserves
should
to have that.
yeah. All right then, Duncan, I'll let you go first on this one. Who have you got for the Derby?
So if you watch the other podcast that we've just done with Jack Morland, I don't know if it was actually before we recorded, but we did ask Jack if he had any favourite for the Derby or the one he'd go for, and he did blurt the words the Lion in Winter, and Elle and I both started celebrating. So
Both started furiously typing.
Yeah. I was going to say, just quickly make notes now whilst you say it. So, yeah, no, the Lion in Winter is the pick for me. Currently, at the time of recording, 9-1 for the illustrious leader of Aidan O'Brien. Whilst he was disappointing being a favourite in the Dante, he finished 6th that day. I think he pretty much did everything possible not to win the race. From the moment the stalls opened, the horse was as keen as mustard. He pulled like a freight train, I think, for about the first 5 furlongs at the least, pulling Ryan's arms out of their sockets. So the race was pretty much already lost then, and I kind of just thought, well, that's the end of that. And then all of a sudden, miraculously, seemed to kind of come from nowhere and stayed on again towards the end of the race, and only finished an impressive 4 lengths down, I thought, to the actual winner. So, and I think that he was interviewed afterwards. Aidan O'Brien was interviewed just after the race, and he said he'd spoken to Ryan, and apparently Ryan was very impressed with how the Lion in Winter had kind of come out from that. And he was very impressed with the performance. So, second start, of the season for him, you expect the horse to be stripped a lot fitter than for the Dante. So at 9-1, I think the price, and I think it's been pushed up probably further because Ryan Moore is not actually riding the Lion in Winter, he's riding Delacroix. I think it's Colin Keane that might have the Lion in Winter. Is it Colin Keane? Yeah. So Colin Keane's riding the Lion in Winter, which again, still a fantastic jockey. So, at 9-1, I think that's a ridiculously big price for that. So fingers crossed, as long as he settles better, I think he should at least be making the places.
5 cherries on that one then.
Oh, definitely not 5 cherries.
4.5.
But you never know. Yeah, go for 4.5.
What about yourself, El? What are you thinking?
Yeah, the stars are aligning again a little bit here, because first thing I would say is that this is a pretty wide open derby, which is great to see for the sport, because people haven't been breeding middle distance horses for a while now, and those numbers have declined, and any good ones are being sold to Hong Kong and Australia and other places. So we've got 19 runners standing their ground for this year's derby, which is the biggest field since 2003. So that's massive in itself. And that's what a derby, when I was growing up, used to look like. A bit like some of the Cheltenham races we talked about that don't look the same anymore because the field sizes are half of what they used to be. So that's great in itself. And Delacroix is probably the worthy favourite on paper because he's won 2 recognised trials in Ireland, the Ballysax and what used to be called the Derrinstown Stud Stakes. But they were both over 10 furlongs, although I can't see any major issues with the trip. So, he's a right favourite. Ruling Court, so a bit similar to the Oaks, in that Godolphin have the favourite in the Oaks, who also won the Guineas, so they won both Guineas. And in the Colts version, Ruling Court got a brilliant ride from Buick, just timed the fractions perfectly to maximise the horse's ability to win over a mile. But again, I'm not so certain he would stay on pedigree, so I'm quite keen to take him on, and he's second favourite, and I thought I might be left with egg on my face for saying it, but Jack and Duncan agree, so I feel a little bit more assured to say the Lion in Winter is one I'm going to take a chance on, because he was the talking horse for this race all winter, because he was quite a good 2-year-old. I actually beat Ruling Court in a 2-year-old race at York last season, and was kind of the anti-post favourite for the Derby. He was also kind of highly fancied for the Guineas, but then had a setback, which is why he missed the Guineas, and then, as Duncan said, only reappeared late in the Dante. But I think they were just desperate to get any run into him, because coming into the Derby for your first run of the season is just, you need a miracle horse to be able to cope with that. And he clearly was just fresh as beans at home because he was sweating in the paddock. He was, he was fresh. He was buzzy, and then sweating going to start. And then as you'll see throughout the race, he is pulling like a cart and did everything wrong basically, and still ran an okay race despite blowing a gasket. And that was a few weeks ago, but that's plenty of time for Aidan to sharpen him up, get all of that fuzziness out of his system, and I think we'll see the real deal on Saturday. But he is a bit of a risk because of that last run. But as Duncan said, the price is there for you. So he would be my main selection. And I thought because it's such a big field, I thought maybe I'll have a quick look to see if there's an each way angle I could put up. And this race this year is actually being run in honour of the late Aga Khan, who, if you've ever seen the green, quite light green silks with the red epaulets, pretty much only race in France now. That's the Aga Khan's colours. And he used to race loads of his horses over here. He's had some big winners.
Clandagan is one that's running on Friday.
Clandagan
in the Coronation Cup.
Yeah,
So the one that we
it's
just
the same
discussed.
colours. And he won the Derby with the likes of Shergar, which was obviously one of the most famous Derby winners ever, who famously got stolen in Ireland. Different story for a different time. And Sindar and horses like that. But then he basically, one of his horses got disqualified once from, I don't know if it was Epsom or Royal Ascot or somewhere high profile, and he basically refused to ever have a runner in England again. So they've been seen few and far between on these shores, but he did pass a while ago, and they're running the Derby in his honour. So this horse Midak runs in his colours. So I was thinking that I wonder if they're just sending this horse because the race is run in his honour. But when you look at his form, he does have a right to race in this big race at Epsom. He didn't race as a 2-year-old, but has improved markedly as a 3-year-old in 3 runs a season. And he was ready winner of a Group 3 race in France last time out, and that was over 10.5 furlongs. And what I liked is that he raced prominently and continued that advantage, because Epsom definitely can suit front runners. And if you've got 19 runners in a Derby, I don't know if you've ever seen a Derby, but they go swinging around Tatton Corner like something out of a cycling race, to be honest, like 2 or 3 abreast, and it's carnage waiting to happen. So you want something out of the way, nice and prominent, and hopefully you can kick on. And at 16-1, I thought that was an each way price, Midak.
Nice. So it's a mile 4.
Yeah.
How quick will they run that, do you think?
You've got to go uphill
Put me on
and
the
then
spot.
come downhill quick. So you've got the dash, which
Probably
is
a
on the
couple of
same
minutes.
day, on the Saturday, which is
minutes.
what we were talking about the other week. I
probably a
think it
little
was a piece
bit
of
more,
trivia that Elle mentioned.
Yeah.
Actually, there's actually an image that I'll put in the doc so you can post it, because it showed they climbed the height of Nelson's column during the race and then dropped down the other side. So they basically climbed for the first half of the race, first half a mile.
Nelson's column.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's the famous stat that everyone says. And then they swing, and they don't just drop down, they turn, and it's a camber all the way down to almost the finish line.
Right.
So
It's like Marmite, isn't it, Elle?
Yeah.
Would you say it's like horses will either love it or hate it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a very,
Interesting.
very tough. That's why it's the Derby, because it's the toughest examination test of the thoroughbred you could find anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. And if they can win that, they'll be a good horse.
Pretty much win
I was just
anything.
The other thing I was just going to say, I was just having a quick look on the Racing Post app, because obviously they've now got the draws, which stalls the horses are going to be coming out from.
Oh yeah.
I just spied the Lion and Winters in 19, so the widest draw of all, and they've got the draw kind of bias, if you like, or kind of the stalls for the Derby winners. There's only been one winner out of stall 19. I think it's stall 10, having had 11
Cash
winners.
out.
So it
Cash
seems
out.
to be-
Cash out,
Yeah,
cash
exactly.
out.
But I mean, you just don't know with this thing. But I was going to ask them before. Obviously, I'd seen this. I seem to remember. I think it was in the Oaks though, rather than the Derby. I seem to remember when they were released from the stores then, and I think it was Frankie when he was on board. Whatchamacallit, can't think of the name of the damn horse now. Like last year, I think it was, where he had to kind of drift all the way over from one side to the other because he was quite wide in the draw. So of course the horse is going to be adding in extra yards that they don't want to be using up.
A really good point.
I can't.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's from stall 19 though, where they're going to have to be drifting back over.
Yeah. So you say 10 is the most common winner?
10's got the most wins clear by far with 11 wins.
Nice.
11 winners of the Derby, and then I think it's stall 5 is next with 6, and then you've got a draw between 1 and 9 being the next ones in there. So
Yeah.
if you're in
It's
stall
another rabbit
10,
hole to get into, isn't it?
I know. Well, that's funny enough, it's Lambourne, which is another one of Aidan O'Brien's horses that's in stall 10, but it's a rogie.
All right. Thanks, boys. Looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Sorry, I've had a couple of weeks off, but we've got to take some holidays, take some time off so we can bring some energy back to the pod. Let us know what you're liking about these podcasts. Drop us your questions, your comments. If you like it, just share. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode. So watch us on YouTube, listen on Apple, Spotify, and then message us on tailoffpod@gmail.com. Keep up to date on our social media on Instagram, TikTok, and X. And until next time, have fun out there. Race smart, race hard, and try not to be tailed off. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Position. Annie Power at the last race down. Annie Power has gone but in front of the last length. Melanie Light.
Right by the first time, they're running up towards the finish, and he's mistaken the winning post. He's mistaken the winning post completely, Roger Loughlin, and Hoyt